Gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Ask Me Anything as part of the Order Man podcast. I am Kip Sorensen. I'm typically the co-host with Mr. Mickler on these Wednesday episodes. Unfortunately, I'll have to run solo today as Mr. Mickler is unable to join me. But we'll have a great conversation. We have some amazing questions from the Facebook group, and we'll be able to dive into it and have some discussion around kind of what guys are dealing with. The questions that I'll be fielding today is from our Facebook group. You can join us there at facebook.com/group/Order of Man, as well as you can learn more about our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council, by going to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Let's jump into it. These are good questions. All right, Brian Hayes, what are your thoughts on overcoming the imposter syndrome? So first, I wanted to make sure I was clear on the imposter syndrome, so I actually pulled up the definition. And if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and share that because I think it might be valuable as a good baseline. So the imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, accomplishments, and has a persistent internalization or an internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. So let's work through that one more time. Psychological pattern, an individual doubts their skills, talents, and accomplishments, and continued internalization around the fear of being exposed. So how do we deal with that? And it's funny because like at first glance, I was like, oh, imposter syndrome, that's difficult. And then we break it down, right? And we break it down based upon its definition. And how do we stop doubting our skills, talents, and accomplishments? Thought process, right? And well, let's back up and let's jump back to the fraud. How do you not be a fraud? Be authentic, right? Not everything relates to jiu-jitsu, even though you might think I believe that. But let's just use jiu-jitsu or learning a new talent as an example. Or better yet, if I decide to, do karate, for instance. If I go in there being more concerned about the way I look and avoiding looking bad versus my focus being around learning, then I'm going to constantly not be learning. I'm going to constantly avoid circumstances to ensure that I don't look like a fraud, that I don't look like an idiot of some sort. But if I'm willing to let that go and say, guess what? I don't know karate. This is something that's not in my wheelhouse. I'm completely green about it. Then it puts me in the mind space of learning. There's nothing to be found out about. There's nothing for me to be a fraud about because I'm openly communicating. I have no idea what I'm doing. And it frees yourself of the social pressures and the judgments of everyone else to just be open to learning. So first, I think we need to make sure that we're not being a fraud. Don't be a fraud. Don't pretend to be amazing at something that you're not amazing about. And ironically, by the way, everyone knows that you're not amazing at it. So stop it, because the only person you're fooling is probably yourself, right? So own the fact that you're not amazing in a particular area. So then that way you're now in a position to learn. So for those of us that are overly concerned about looking good and avoiding looking bad, let that go and be authentic about where your standing is. So then you can be open for growth. All right. Now, how do we get past the second guessing of our accomplishments? That's our thought process. And part of it is, I think that imposter syndrome, a lot of that will come from us not realizing or that we're actually not good at it. And we may have been telling ourselves a story that, oh, we're so amazing or whatever. But in reality, like, we honestly, truly don't believe that. So I think there's an evidence or a level of that's part of the conversation. I think the other aspect of it is see it for what it is. Remove the story, right? What did you accomplish and what did you not accomplish? And necessarily it's good for you to see the good and the bad, right? For me, it was difficult for me to do that marathon. That was a difficult thing. I feel accomplished about it. Now, could I have done better? Could I have trained harder? Could I have done, am I an amazing quote unquote marathon? No, I'm not, but it was still an accomplishment based upon where I was and where I am today. And so I think as long as we're progressing and we feel that we are in integrity about our growth and what we're accomplishing, we can have those moments of looking back a little bit, seeing where we came from, celebrating the wins and the accomplishments that we have, and then continually moving forward. I think if we focus on that, that's how we move past those thoughts. But I actually would probably suggest that most of us that are concerned about imposter syndrome, it's because we feel like we're imposters, because maybe we are, right? And we need to let go of the ego and accept the fact that there's some growth there. And when that's not the case and we actually do belong or we are succeeding, then I think that's a lack of us looking back at our past and celebrating the wins a little bit and realizing where we've come from and what we've accomplished. And there's a little bit of comparison happening there too, I think, where, I might be hesitant to celebrate my wins because I think that, well, that win, Ryan wouldn't think that's amazing, or he's doing so much better, or someone else. And then I downplay my own accomplishment. Don't do that. Don't compare, right? Realize where you've come from, celebrate the success, but don't hang out in the celebration of it all. Like, accept it, have some reflection, and then get back on the path of growth. And I think that's how we deal with that appropriately. Hopefully that helps, Brian. All right, Carl Weber. What are some good options for reading up on working through narcissistic relationships? And I didn't understand, Carl, my apologies. I didn't understand the second part of this question, but I'll read it anyway. It is an unavoidable one in a whole, but can be parsed out into limited interactions. Maybe suggested strategies of how do we deal with that type of relationship. So I don't know. I'm on a kick, man. I want to pull up Webster again, right? What is the definition of a narcissistic relationship? It is so. Narcissistic partners usually have difficulty really loving someone else because they don't truly love themselves. They are so focused on themselves that they cannot really see their partner as a separate person. They tend to only see the partner in terms of how they will fill their needs. Okay, so how do we deal with that, right? Or good options for dealing with it. So the first thing is, I think you need to get in the proper mindset that, are you in the relationship with that person because you choose to be, or because you think you can change them? So if Brian, let's say in your example, not Brian, Carl, you're in this relationship with a narcissistic partner, and you're sticking it out because they can change, that's not going to go well. So a distinction that was shared years ago, and I use it from time to time, is the difference of choosing someone or choosing to love one without reason. So let me give you an example. And this is, I don't know, maybe this isn't the best example, but I'll try. So you can say, Kip, let me choose someone that I'm like kind of stuck with, and that sounds bad. Not stuck with as in like, I hate them or anything, but they're my parent. Okay. Your parent's your parent. You can't change them. Right. So someone may ask me, Kip, why do you love your dad? And I could have some reasons, right? He is a hard worker. He provided for me and my family. He has really great dry humor. I could run off with a bunch of things. And then if that's my reason for loving him, what if he doesn't do those things anymore? As he gets older, what if his humor goes away? What if, because of his deteriorating physical health, he can't work. He's not a hard worker anymore. Like, then why do I love him? Because I choose to. Period. Make choice the reason. Why do you love your spouse? Because I choose to love her the way she is. So, Carl, my suggestion to you is there's far more power in coming to a relationship and saying that you're choosing to love someone because you choose to love them. Be careful not to base your love on a condition of them changing. I think that could be very dangerous. Now, is this someone that you're married to and you're committed to and you have kids? I'm not going to even go down that path of all those scenarios because I don't know the specific details. But try to choose someone and have choice be the reason, not, well, they're loving or whatever. Because then when they have a bad day, then what? You don't love them anymore, right? So make it about choice. Now, how do we deal with this specifically? So the key thing is in the definition, a narcissistic individual doesn't love themselves, right? And so the world surrounds them. So I would focus, once again, this is like, I don't know why I have to keep saying this because I'm just so paranoid, right? That we get into this pitfall of like changing people. It doesn't work. You're not going to change someone, right? Now, can we provide some guidance and direction and everything? For sure. But don't go down this path of trying to change someone. So first off, be a great example. Be a great example of someone who loves themselves, someone that is provides grace to other individuals, that is caring and serves, right? That is our number one way to provide guidance and direction to other individuals is by being a great example. So look for how do you become the ideal example of a non-narcissistic individual. Second, I would focus on how do we get that individual or how do we help that individual see why they should love themselves more than they do and how amazing they are. And so you might need to adjust your love language a little bit, make sure that you're expressing love in an appropriate manner where that person feels loved and supported. Because we all see love differently. So maybe even having the conversation of what does love look like? What does the ideal husband, what does the ideal husband do for you to feel loved? What would that look like, right? Have those conversations, adjust a little bit on your side, and then let it be. And I would try to really remove the judgment and the harshness of them not being the way you want them to be, because I think that will be more damaging than not. So have some grace and also realize that not everything's permanent in life. And so realize that there's growth and we all have our times and our seasons, and we should be affording grace to everybody for that matter. Certainly those that we're in a relationship with. So Carl, hopefully that helps. Daniel Price, after listening to your podcast from the other week, I decided it's time to get over my fear and get armed with my wife. Armed with my wife. When I brought up teaching our oldest son, 12, how to shoot, she disagreed and said kids should start with BB guns. Who is right? No one is right. Maybe she's right. Maybe you're right. Doesn't matter who's right per se, right? She might have some valid concerns. Based upon your 12-year-old, all 12-year-olds aren't the same. Right? So based upon your 12-year-old, should he have a BB gun first before he's shooting something else? I don't know. Right? Now, if he's obviously, he or she, oldest son, he's obviously not shooting a BB gun. I don't think so. So maybe that's a natural, great way to start. You know what I mean? Just to expose and maybe have some, muzzle control time on a weapon that's not going to, cause some damage. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong. Some 12-year-olds are ready for a bigger gun, and some aren't. So I think it really depends on your 12-year-old more than anything else. Regardless, whether you get him a BB gun or not, I would suggest that you do have him shoot an actual like caliber weapon. It might scare him, and that's okay. He should be scared. I remember the first time that I had my boys shoot my 40 caliber handgun. They shot one round and they're like, yeah, I'm good. Like, I'm okay. No more, dad. And the reason why is it kind of scared them a little bit. They need to understand the danger of the weapon, right? Remove that curiosity that they might have around those guns. And one of the ways that we can do that is at least have them shoot. But maybe the majority of that shooting is with a BB gun initially, right? To see if he's responsible enough to have a gun or to handle another gun. See how he does. Go out in the range, grab some cans, shoot him, show him hunter safety or, gun control, whatever, muzzle control, and see how he does. And if he proves himself, maybe it's a great transition to another caliber, 22 or something else. So I wouldn't say she's right, you're wrong, or vice versa. Who knows? It really depends on your kid and whether he's shooting a gun or a BB gun, it's probably good, right? So I would take what you can get and start the path, whether it's a BB gun or a rifle for that matter. So, all right, next question. Bill McNay. How do you remain objective at your place of business after you identify that they are building a virtual signaling culture? All right. This is good. So Bill, I think my answer would be different depending on your role within the organization, right? If you're on the executive team and you realize that the executive team is leaning in the direction of building that type of culture, you're probably in a position to have that conversation about the drawbacks of that. And should what we do as an organization be more about how it's presented than actually what we are doing, right? Like virtual signaling has a tendency to lack integrity, maybe. I think is like, oh, we're doing this on purpose. So, it's almost like a marketing campaign versus, hey, we do work honorably, or we care about, I don't know, social issues because we care and because we choose to. Those ring true differently, right? And one could promote a positive culture and the other one could promote kind of a smoke and mirrors, lack of integrity culture. And so if you're in a position from an executive side, I think you can have that conversation about the drawbacks of promoting such a culture. Now, if you're not in that position, you could probably, perhaps, depending on where you are in the chain of command, bring that up to your boss as, what concerns you have around it. One thing's for sure though, Bill, it's really interesting. We all have heard that term, virtual signaling, and we immediately have like these preconceived assumptions of what that means. I would get really clear in your own mind. If I were going to talk to my boss, if I was going to bring something up to the executive team about the dangers or the drawbacks of virtual signaling, I'd get seriously educated in regards to, are those assumptions accurate? Is it really negative? What are the drawbacks? Like, become an expert on virtual signaling and for yourself, identify really why it's negative. Just don't go off of, media that we hear on social media or news or whatever about, oh, this virtual signaling, virtual signaling that. It's almost like a label now, right? So get clear in your own mind. Like, what does that really mean to virtual signal? What are the drawbacks to a culture? What could it possibly promote? As well as what are the possible benefits, right? Could it help our company recruit better employees if they think that we're virtuous as an organization? Yeah, possibly. Could it come across negative as well? Like, just really get real and clear on it and get very logical so you can have that conversation with the appropriate individuals. Now, if you're in a company culture that you feel is like kind of toxic and really negative and you highly disagree with, and you're clear in regards to your ability to provide some insight and direction, or have a say in the matter, then, maybe it's not the ideal culture for you either. right? So that's another thing to consider. But be careful on that approach, because I think that's easy, right? That's the easy, like, let me just demonize everyone else. Oh, it's bad culture. There's nothing I can do about it, and hate your job and leave, instead of rising up and looking for the opportunity to uplift other individuals and educate them, right? Maybe it's as simple as going through the chain of command and saying, hey, I feel like our company does this. I would love to do a presentation about the pros and cons of virtual signaling within the organization, and what the cultural impact is, and present it in a very positive way, like in a very objective way that's intelligent and concise and clear, and not overly judgmental, you know what I mean, and quick to conclusions and all the things and all those other things. So it might be a great opportunity to have that conversation. In fact, even right now, I'm thinking, oh man, I would like to actually dive into this some more and get really clear in my own mind, what is virtual signaling exactly, and what are the cultural impacts? I actually think it's a great conversation. And a lot of organizations are kind of jumping on that bandwagon a little bit. So what's the drawbacks? I don't know. So hopefully that helps, Bill. All right, Bailey Lawnberg. What's the best way to get hyper-focused when trying to do a mundane tasks that you don't want to do? I understand that making yourself do it to become the master of the mundane, to speak, but what tips and tricks do the two of you get to get efficient and effective on boring, tedious things in the workplace? I have a slow-paced job in the State Department. No one is held at a very high standard. Geez, man, I can't read today. No one is held at a very high standard, and we do really uninspiring work, which I feel makes it even harder. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Let's look at this. So first off, I think you can make your work inspiring, even if it's mundane. And I think it's about inspiring. You become the thing that's inspiring. Meaning, all right, like filling out a paper is not like, I have to fill all these forms all day long. It's not like I'm not having a major breakthrough of innovation, and I'm not saving the company tons of money or whatever. But like, you could be inspiring, like how you show up. Man, Kip, I know all he's filling out is TPI reports, but man, he does it so well. He is so organized. He gets so many done. Like, make yourself the thing that's inspiring when it comes to mundane work. Now, I'd like to talk to the importance of focus time, which I think is literally the same thing. So at the company I'm at right now, one of the conversations that we're having on the executive team is the importance of deep work. And it's really interesting because there's some correlations here. So in the corporate America, we call it deep work. In extreme sports, they call it flow state. But it is focused, dedicated time to a task. Now, it didn't say dedicated focused time for an entertaining task or an inspiring task. No, to a task, period. And there's major benefits to this. In fact, the benefits of having focused time on a single task creates a sense of fulfillment, accomplishment, balance, reduction of stress and chaos. Like, there are benefits to focused time. The problem is we live in a world of distraction, constant distraction, and instant gratification. That is our world. And you could replace distraction with gratification. So let me give you a typical corporate office scenario. I need to work on some documentation, or I need to write up a statement of work. Kind of mundane, right? It's going to be, 20 pages documentation of security guidelines around Office 365. Does not sound very fun. So, but I need to write this up. Mundane, not very inspiring. and then someone walks by. Distraction. Oh, hey, dude, how you doing? Right? Or, oh, phone vibrated. Let me grab my phone. Distraction. Also, gratification. They're distractions to a mundane task. And guaranteed, all of us can be distracted all day long. If you wanted to, some of us could spend our entire day just answering emails. And then what happens on those kind of days? You leave the office feeling what? That you didn't accomplish anything. You were busy, but you really didn't move the needle. You communicated, you got distracted, you had lots of conversations, but the backpack of responsibility and tasks and things that need to get done is still hanging on your back, and you didn't progress any further at the end of the day than you were at the beginning of the day. So focus time is very, very valuable. And no, let me say it this way, valuable to yourself and to your organization. So then how do we do this, right? How do we have focus time? So let me give you some of my strategies that we've talked about here at my employment. So I'm pulling up a slide deck to actually read some of the stuff. So give me a second. All right, here's some things from a cultural perspective that I think we can do at a company level. First, realize that roles are different in an organization. So some roles are going to require more deep work than others, right? Sales reps and business development, there's not very much deep work. Programmers, completely on the other end of that spectrum, a great deal of deep work. We need to respect the differences of roles and realize certain individuals require deep work. Companies can promote noise cancellation headphones, reserving phone rooms, conference rooms, eliminate the opportunity of distraction from where we work. For a lot of us, we're working at home, establishing boundaries. When that door is closed, when I have a sign on the door, unless the house is on fire, you don't even knock, right? Statistically, for a programmer, for instance, a single interruption eats away, I think, roughly 15 to 25 minutes of time to ramp back up where that thought process was, right? Huge productivity is being lost by distractions. And distractions are everything from a phone vibrating to someone walking up to your desk, to a notification on your computer, to I got a new email, to a phone call, etc. We need to create an environment where those distractions are turned off. I would close email. I'd turn off your phone. I would change your status on your instant messaging. I would close social media notifications. Adjust your ecosystem to promote it. Okay. Second, this is like 4. Have an orderly office. Believe it or not, organization, things put away is a distraction to you. You have a messy desk. You have these other things around you that's all disorganized and laying all over the place. That's a distraction. Organize your workspace or wherever that is. Second, systems and processes. Do you have systems and processes in your life and in the workspace that allows you to efficiently get to the information that you need to accomplish your job in an effective manner? In the corporate America space, we call this knowledge management, right? In information architecture, this is important. All right. I could spend a great deal of time getting distracted, trying to find the information I need to do my job. So this is part of the orderly office, but on the information side, right? Organize your files and your things appropriately so you're efficient and you can get straight to task and not be distracted trying to find things. Okay. Clear chain of command. This is important. Why? Because you know who you need to talk to when you need to talk to someone, right? And we eliminate the distraction of, well, I talked to him and I need to talk to here, and not knowing who to communicate with to accomplish your job. And then last, roles and responsibilities defined. What specifically do you need to work on as an individual? Okay, now those are kind of the cultural things. On the personal side, these are things that I would recommend. And some of those are personal. I guess your workspace could be your personal, but those tips are really typically from a company or organizational perspective. On a daily basis, to promote deep work or focus time, I'd remove any reoccurring or unnecessary meetings from your day. I would schedule your focused work. So literally be very intentional about it. Grab windows of time. If they're windows of 1 to 2 hours, have 15-minute breaks and hold yourself to those times. So work it within your schedule and honor it, right? Don't honor the distraction. Your focus time needs to be a priority, just like everything else in life. If you want to do something, you got to schedule it. You got to make it a priority. This is no different. Last, an end-of-day process I would highly recommend. And what that end-of-day process is evaluating your day and determining, okay, based upon how today went, how did it go, right? We talk about this in the Iron Council and on this podcast a lot. Have an after-action review. What went well? What worked? What did not go well? What do I need to adjust for tomorrow? Okay. End of day, review all the urgent issues. Make sure that there's nothing else that's urgent that needs to be addressed from a work perspective. Create a list for the urgent items in which you can address tomorrow, kind of like the must-dos for tomorrow. Andy Frisella talks about his power list. Adjust your schedule. Review the schedule for tomorrow. And then most importantly, stop working. Actually end your day. That allows you to honor your focus time when you stop working. If that bleeds into your personal life, it affects your personal life. The next day you come in, you're strung out. Make the separation. Stop working when you're done doing your focus time. Stop being focused and move on to the next task. Now, I could spend a lot of time talking about this. My apologies, but there's so much to this. And to your question, Bailey, I actually think that even the master of the mundane, by being super focused on what you're doing and not having the distractions, we might find out that during those mundane tasks that we actually start finding innovation in what we're doing. We might start going, whoa, actually, you know what? As I hyper focus on this task, I just realized we can maybe automate this. There's a way that we could attack this better, or my approach to complete this task could be done better. But that requires your full undivided attention to that task to be able to see those areas of innovation. All right, I think I may have covered that a little too much. All right, Bailey, hopefully that was valuable. All right, Carl Verscher. Sorry, Carl Alphabet. Is there such a thing as being too good of an employee? How do I continue to grow in the eyes of the company and my bosses while still not making my coworkers look bad? All right. So believe it or not, I've had this conversation with a buddy of mine where there's actually like work drama due to him pushing and working really hard. Like, no joke, employees are reacting and saying, dude, you're making the rest of us look bad. Like, it's actually creating like this cultural problem. And if that's the level of culture that you're in, my answer may be drastically different than what I'm about to suggest. But I'm assuming that most companies aren't that bad, and that your concern of making your coworkers look bad is probably a little bit more in your head than actual reality. And now that I say that and I think about this for a second, I don't know, maybe my answer wouldn't be any different. The reality of it is, and I'm going to go on the hard stance on this one. The reality of it is, if your coworkers are going to look bad because you're leveling up and doing your job really, really well, then so be it. Like, that's on them. You have integrity. You kick ass and you achieve. And if that makes people look bad or feel uncomfortable, that's on them. You need to rise up, be the example. If they want to join you at being an amazing employee, awesome. But if they're not, and they're going to look bad because your shadow is overcasting over what they're doing, then so be it. Rise the bar. And I think now that kind of sucks because you might be in a position of culturally being there. Now, are there strategies, Carl, that you can take on bringing them with you? For sure. In fact, I think if you have an idea, let's say, I don't know, you have an idea to improve a process of some sort, and you share it in a way that might be inspiring to another team member, they might jump on board. Hey, Carl, man, I was thinking about this. I was realizing the other day, and I'm just not excited. Like, I don't think we achieve. There's so much that we could accomplish. And I really have kind of been lately bought into this idea of like killing it at work. I think we should let's push forward as a team. Let's do amazing things. I think there's so much more that we can accomplish if we like really buckle down and accomplish things better. What do you think we could do? Maybe they're on board. Maybe the guy will be like, you know what? I agree. Yeah, let's do this. Right. So try to be inspiring. Try to enroll those guys into the conversation of be inspiring and succeeding and rising up. And maybe these guys might join you. But ultimately, if you have some personality types that are just straight up victims and they're lazy and there's no desire that they have on their end whatsoever to do their jobs better, leave them in the dust, man. They should get probably fired anyway, to be frank. And your job and your objective should be, how do you show up as a man, have integrity, and do your job damn well, and do it. And if it makes other people look bad, so be it. Now, don't do it intentionally to make them look bad. I'm not suggesting that. And even be frank, like, to continue to grow in the eyes of the company and my bosses, like, I even think that might even be the wrong mindset too. Grow in the eyes of my company and bosses. No, just do the job really, really well. Like, kick ass. And don't worry, that's the byproduct of being amazing, is people in the company, your boss, are going to notice that. But don't make that the focal point. Otherwise, you might compromise the scenario and go, oh, well, let me do it at this time so they notice. Like, don't do that. No, don't play the game. Just be an amazing guy and be amazing at what you do. And people are going to notice. But make your work ethic and having integrity and honoring your word, make that the reason you're doing it. And as a byproduct, the company and the bosses will notice. The other thing is, if that's the focus, that's the kind of man you are, and that can be inspiring to the other employees. But if they catch that you're only doing it to be noticed by the company and the boss, now that lacks integrity, and now it's just kissing ass, and they're going to see that and be annoyed by it. So make it about who you are as a man and your work ethic, not about the other things. That will come. Opportunities will present themselves when we rise up. Don't worry about that. In fact, I feel so confident that will show up. Just give it time and change the mindset. David Rivas, 2 questions. Disclaimer, it's not easy coming up with questions for you when the order man has taught us how to find and resolve on our own. That's good, David. All right, question number 1. And because that was a great comment, David, you get 2 questions. I'm going to give you both. All right, question number 1. How do you know? Let me take a drink. Hold on. All right. How do you know about anger issues? Is it a real thing? I think I may have a low tolerance or a weak patience for ignorance. Either way, it's a concern I need to address. No worries. 5 years of order man has taught me to restrain when I do converse. Question number 2. I'm finding it difficult to find like-minded men the more I interact in discussions primarily aimed at taking ownership and personal accountability of all discussions a man makes. All right. So first question around anger issues and anger around tolerance for other individuals. I think, David, the key to this is you're coming to conclusions of judgment too quickly. Let me explain. I'm trying to think of an example here. So if someone does something and it immediately like fires me up, right? And I get mad or frustrated. That tells me that I'm passing judgment immediately without any detail, and that I should pause and evaluate the circumstance. So, for instance, if that individual, let's say I label them as ignorant, blah, blah, blah. Why? Why are they ignorant about the thing in which is making me mad? Were they raised different than me? Do they have a different level of education than I have? Do they have the same experiences in life that I have? And if the answer to all those questions is no, then who am I to say that they should see something that is so obvious? They may have just not had the same chances and opportunities to understand something as you and I, period. And even better yet, assume, and I know this is not truth, but it's a great perception to have, or perspective to have. If you were them, raised by the same parents, in the same social circumstances that they were raised in, you would do the same thing. So who are you to say that they shouldn't be ignorant about something? Now, you talked about in your second question about ownership. There's also some ownership here, right? I have an employee. Maybe we jump on a project and the employee's explaining something wrong. I can immediately pause and go, dang it, right? Like, we went over this already, guys. Right? I've explained this to you. This is how we architect the system and blah, blah, blah. The ownership side of that conversation is apparently I didn't explain it well enough. Apparently I wasn't dynamic enough in my explanation that it registered for that employee. So let me take responsibility of their ignorance and pivot and adjust how I am as a leader to ensure that they're no longer ignorant around that discussion point. Okay. Work example. Let's give a social example. I might pull up social media right now, Instagram, and see a post from someone, immediately get pissed off, right? Oh my gosh, this person is so ignorant and stupid. They don't understand this social circumstance. They obviously didn't research anything, blah, 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 blah. I could be very quickly judgmental, but then I have to also realize that what's human nature? Human nature is to tribalize. They've identified themselves as part of a tribe. Maybe that tribe is a political group. They read a headline. It aligns with their tribe. They stand by that tribe. They regurgitate information with very little time in understanding and or investigation on their part. Makes sense. Now I can actually have maybe some empathy and realize that they're being victims of their human condition. And unfortunately in their life, they've never apparently have learned the value in critical thinking, and they're being lazy with their thought process. Okay, got it. Right? Like, don't do what they do, right? In that example, you judging them too quickly and not understanding how they are acting is a lack of thought, critical thinking on your part around that individual and that human. So add critical thinking to everything and realize things are all complex, where everything's more complex, right? Whenever I hear like a soundbite for news, oh, they didn't do this, or let's use Trump's taxes as an example. Trump doesn't pay his taxes. He only pays $750 a month or whatever. Okay. That's federal taxes. How much does he pay state? What's his income? Like start looking through all the other things and understand the data, but it's no different than our judgments on individuals. And I think most of the time when we have some critical thinking, we can actually end up having empathy for them and not like, don't feel sorry for them, but have some empathy, understand where they're at. And everyone's on a different path, and sometimes you're just going to have to shake your head a little bit and say, kind of feel sorry for them, right? That they don't realize who or how they show up in life and that they're being overly ignorant. From a work perspective, take some extreme ownership, figure out how do you teach your people not to be ignorant about a particular subject. All right, question number 2. I find it difficult to find like-minded men and more interactions, men, the more I interact on discussions primarily aimed at taking ownership and personal accountability. There's a reason why the Iron Council is such a big deal. I really do. I mean, so the Iron Council is our brotherhood, if you want, our mastermind group that is tied to this podcast, to Order of Man. And we're roughly 700 members that are associated to a team that meet weekly, hold each other accountable, push each other through goals, have critical conversations and discussions and ideas and concepts. And Ryan has mentioned this in the past. Guys don't join, get their data, and they leave in 6 months because they're all good to go. They could, some of them, but we don't. Why? Because we're part of the community. It's amazing how often I'm in awe and I'm inspired by conversations within the Iron Council, whether it's being on a battle team call or our all hands calls on Fridays or leadership calls. Why? It's refreshing to have those kind of conversations with like-minded men. And David, I only bring this up because I understand. It's difficult to find those guys in our lives. And it's refreshing to be part of a community with so many guys. Now, you could join the Iron Council if you want to look into that, orderofman.com/Iron Council. Otherwise, let's talk about how do we create that in our communities, right? Or how do we find those men, right? And I think they're there. I think they're all around us. We're just not having the conversation, right? You're not, I don't know. You're not in a group with friends and saying, hey, so Bob, how do you feel about extreme ownership? Or how do you feel about being a victim and blaming your wife for the circumstances or the lack of your marriage? You don't have those conversations very often, right? Because they're kind of like, I don't know, socially awkward to have maybe, or whatever. So one strategy that I've used in the past where I had some friends that I weren't sure if like-minded, and let me pause for a second. We all have friends, obviously, but it's ironic. We didn't interview any of them, right? Like your friends are like your spouse's friends, or they're guys that you went to high school with or whatever. That doesn't mean they're on the same path as you, right? So we might have some buddies that might be though. And so one strategy that I've used in the past is I grab a specific book and I actually buy them a book. And I say, hey, dude, read this book and let me know what you think. Now, if they read the book and they're like, yeah, that was lame. I was hoping for pictures and a better story or whatever, then obviously they're not like-minded. And books that I'm talking about are Sovereignty, Ryan's book, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, No More Mr. Nice Guy, James Allen's As a Man Thinketh, Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning, like kind of those foundational books that would be the telltale sign that if it resonated with them, then they're like-minded, right? They're at least willing to have that conversation. So that's my suggestion. Use books, give books to friends, see if it resonates with them. And then the other part is just be that stellar example and lighthouse so much that guys will start finding you, where they'll be like, hey, you know what, Kip, I want to have a conversation with you. There's something about you, right? You're killing it. Like, what are you doing that I'm not doing? And then you can start having those conversations as well. But yeah, so obviously always focus on who you are, how you're showing up. That's the best way for us to be examples of other individuals. Let your light shine so people can ask and come to you as well. So those are the strategies. Oh, and one last one. Jump on the Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Order of Man. Reach out to other guys that are geographically in your area. Have a fight night. Schedule a time to go to the range, start having conversations, right? Find those like-minded guys. And unfortunately in our space, for guys anyway, it's rubbing shoulder to shoulder, right? So it's joining a martial arts school, boxing gym, jiu-jitsu, archery. Find guys that have common interests, start having those conversations, and see if you can find those guys. Okay. All right. Ulrich Burke. You can't ensure anything in life, but what are you doing today to prepare your children for tomorrow? With the fast pace of technology and the instant gratification culture we have today, how are you preparing them morally, emotionally, and intellectually? So, Ulrich, luckily for me, I probably dropped the ball in regards to doing this effectively for my older kids, which has allowed me to learn that lesson, I hope. And my wife and I, we kind of have like two batches. We have the older batch, the younger batch. And so we've pivoted, right, and adjusted a little bit and saying, okay, what adjustments do we need to make for our younger kids to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes, right, that we've made for our older children. And so I'll just kind of share some of those things that we're doing. So first off, there's a couple things that you mentioned here: fast-paced technology and instant gratification culture. You create an environment by which they receive gratification over a delayed period of time. The author of The Boy Crisis, he talks about delayed gratification is really a management of dopamine, right? Feel-good drug, right, that our body releases. And you get that from a great deal of things. You get it from listening to your parents, believe it or not. You get it from working hard and seeing your success at the end of the hard-working day. You get it from following and being in integrity. But guess what? You also get it, a huge amount of it, from playing video games. You actually get it from doing something wrong, from arguing. And so you're really fighting the battle of gratification. And there are so many ways for kids to have gratification, superficial gratification, if you want to use that term, via video games and social media and likes. How many likes did I get on my post? And, or hearts or whatever that's called on Instagram. And so you're competing with that. And so I would try in as early as possible, start creating these opportunities for your children to find gratification in lasting things, fulfillment. And the things that I would focus on is hard work. 2 weeks ago, went down to the parents' house. My parents had the girls with me, ages 9, 7, and I have a 1-year-old. And we literally spent the entire day working, from beginning of the day to almost into the dark. Why? Not because it was fun. It would have been probably easier if they didn't join and they weren't involved in the process. But I want them to feel the gratification of a hard day's work, the gratification of helping someone else, right? 2 Sundays. And I don't say these things because I'm like trying to sound like a saint or anything. Half these ideas are really my wife's. But like last Sunday? Yeah, last Sunday, went to a homeless shelter and at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning and serve the homeless, right? And help cook and help serve them for hours, like 4 hours, I think 4 or 5 hours on a Sunday. Why? Not easy, by the way. It would have been easier to let the kids sleep, but we wanted to create the experience for them to get the gratification of serving someone else. Now, there's other benefits, obviously, but they see the benefit of it. So start trying to create as many situations as much as possible for our kids to receive and find gratification in doing good, serving other individuals, finding gratification, working hard, doing difficult things, achieving, following goals, giving to the poor, etc. Right? Look for those. Now, you also asked about preparing them morally, emotionally, intellectually. Make them a priority. Help them understand why spirituality is important now, not later, not when they're a little bit older. Like, they got to understand it now. Why should they have a spiritual relationship with the Creator? What's the benefit of that? By the time, at least from my perspective, by the time I think they're old enough to understand, it has started becoming too late to have it be a habit for them. And for older kids, I would really start having like deeper spiritual conversations and kind of stoic conversations around the importance of living a fulfilled life, to understanding the benefit of living a life of purpose with direction, and how that plays a part in helping us not feel depressed and suicidal and being blown as a tumbleweed with the wind with whatever society's deciding. Like, really get clear on this for yourself and integrate your children as quickly and as early as possible in understanding the benefits of this to them. I might be being too hypothetical with you, Ulrich, but for us, it's, one of the things, like, of late, like probably this past year, is, I look at my older kids and they don't read enough, right? I'm kind of like, man, you guys hardly ever read books, and there's so much value in reading. I never read books as a kid. And so I paused this year and I was like, okay, wait a second, right? What am I doing for the younger kids? Are they reading? Are they finding the joy in reading? No. And it's really easy to say, well, they're young in school. No. We need to become a reading family, a family that reads, right? Another thing, we say nightly prayers, individual ones, right? We might say a prayer as a family, and then we go to our bed and the girls say their individual prayers. I say my individual prayers with them. All right, guys, are you ready? Set, go. And we all say our individual prayers. That way we ensure it happens. That's me trying to have them create their own personal relationship and not be reliant on family prayers for them to be praying and pondering on things. The second thing that I would suggest, and I talked about this last week on the AMA with Ryan, is like, we expect our kids to, maybe have delayed gratifications, to have morals and emotional intelligence. And back to the question earlier about do mundane tasks, but do we train them to do any of those things, right? We can't expect our kids to do things that we haven't trained them to do. So what are we doing as parents to train them to build a spiritual relationship, to see the value in morals? And you might have to be super, super creative with this. Running our mouths at the end of the day about, why this is important, now go to bed, may not be sufficient, right? We may need to make it fun, entertaining, and look for a huge amount of opportunities constantly to be able to create this ecosystem by which our kids can start seeing the value of those things. And as always, the example or how we show up is probably the most critical aspect of this all. We need to be clear why that's all important for ourselves. We need to make sure that technology and instant gratification is not showing up in our lives, right? We need to be the ultimate example of this, and then look for opportunities to teach our kids. Okay. All right. A couple more questions and we'll go ahead and wrap up. So Skylar Byrne, sorry. How to stay connected with your kids when you have a toxic ex. So I don't know how old the kids are, Skylar, but I'm going to throw out a bunch of ideas here. How to stay connected to your kids when you have a toxic ex. First off, don't be toxic. Don't be the other toxic ex. Never speak ill of your ex in any way. Don't talk negative about her. In fact, go above and beyond. And when they're frustrated with her, help them to have empathy. and be slow to judge. Oh, I hate it when mom does this. Oh man, keep in mind, she has a lot going on her plate. Be mindful of your mom. You need to respect her. Like, look for the opportunities to speak positive about her. Never go toxic. And you're going to be obviously tempted to do so, because if she's saying bad things about you, you're going to want to turn on its head and don't. Take the higher road. Be the greater man, greater person, and don't speak ill of them. That's number one. Number two, don't assume that your communication to them goes unnoticed, whether they reply or not. I think a lot of single fathers have a tendency to do this. Oh, I text my son all the time for a few weeks, but he never replied, so I stopped. Don't do that. You assume that because they don't reply, that the expectation that you had on the communication isn't met, so you're going to stop doing it. Don't do that. Let go of the expectation that you have. They may never reply. They may never send you emoji. They may, when you do have a phone call with them, it'll be like, I don't know, miserable, right? Hey, how you doing, son? Great. How's school? Great. Right? It might be like pulling teeth out, right? It may be miserable, but don't stop, because what you are teaching them is that you are there, regardless of how they interact or reply with you. So don't give up on your communication. Let go of the expectation that you have on them about how they should be showing up. Back to what I was saying earlier, love them without reason and continue your path of staying connected. Ideas around staying connected. Text messages. Just send them a random text, thinking about you, son, love and miss you, period. Sending them thoughts. Here's a great quote I read in this book, especially if they're older kids. You got to check this out. Watch this YouTube video. Send them an Instagram post that you thought was inspirational. Figure out what's interesting them. I know without a doubt right now, I can send a Mandalorian season 2 post to my 2 older boys, and they'll be like, awesome. Dad, did you see this, fan created video on Star Wars? Like, that's a common interest that we have. So I could take advantage of that and send them those kind of things. Figure out what they're interested in. Communicate with them. We have amazing technology to communicate. We have no reason whatsoever not to be constantly communicated. So use social media, use instant messaging, use video phone calls. Hey, check out this thing that I'm working on. Hey, starting a new goal, just working out. Have you worked out yet today? Like, look for those opportunities to constantly stay connected and just continue and let go of any expectation of how they should be replying. And over time, you're going to start getting to a point where your boys are like, hey, Dad, I need some advice. Or do you have a recommended book about this? Right? And then you're going to be able to start having those deeper conversations over time, because they see you as someone that they can reach out to for advice and direction. And whether your ex is toxic or not, you weren't. And they'll be drawn to you because you weren't toxic to them, right? You didn't speak ill of them. And you are the example of how you rise above when people think ill of you. And what a great lesson, or what a great thing for them to learn of what that looks like. Because what are the chances that they're going to have people in their life that is going to speak ill of them and going to think negative of them? Well, great, man. You have this excellent opportunity. You have this person that thinks ill of you. Show them how it's done. Show them how you rise above. Show them how you make your honor, your integrity, and how you show up in life the priority, and regardless of what people think. And you don't stoop down, right, to those people's level. Okay. Let's do one more question. Greg Lewis. How can I be a good mentor to my siblings who are 20 years younger? Zing Alec, sorry. So Zing, I think it's pronounced Zing. the best way is to be the lighthouse. We talk about this in the Iron Council a lot, right? Be a lighthouse. Don't be a tugboat. You can't force people to do something, but you can be a lighthouse and be inspiring in a way so much that people will seek you out as a mentor, right? I can't think of any circumstances, at least in my life, and I'm probably assuming a lot of us couldn't, where we were someone's mentor because we chose to be their mentor. I don't think it works that way. Now, if they've sought you out and you are kind of their built-in mentor, how do you be a good one? You become a great person. That makes you a great mentor and a great person in all areas, right? Or at least mentor in the areas that you are good at. Ryan talks about this quite a bit, right? We don't have a mentor, like my mentor in jiu-jitsu is not my mentor in business, and my mentor in business does not provide mentorship in relationships. Those are different people. So figure out how you can provide some value to your siblings, be that lighthouse for them. And it's really about how you show up and sharing yourself with them as much as possible. And there's huge value in sharing your lessons versus preaching. Also known as a testimony versus preaching. Testimonies are powerful. Why? Because you're not saying, hey, you should do X. You suggest, hey, you know what? I learned this. This is what worked for me. And it gives them the freedom to try it on for themselves. Be careful not to be preachy, especially with siblings. That could be rubbed wrong and maybe not ideal, and is actually just quite less effective. So just share yourself, but let them seek you out as a mentor, and just be a good example until then. Okay. Last one. We'll do one more. Gary Tate. What would you suggest some ways to disengage or withdraw from an argument that is getting emotional? Well, disengage and withdraw, at least for me, means just walk away, right? Like literally disengage from it. Assuming that you don't want to do that, because you could just disengage. I don't know ways like you stop. That's how you disengage. However, if what you're maybe asking, Gary, is like, how do I disengage my emotions? That might be a different thing. And I think we've kind of answered this question earlier. It's understanding people, getting it, like just really honestly getting it, and not having people's intellectual understanding of something mean something about themselves or making it mean something about you, right? It gets emotional. A great book on this, by the way, is Crucial Conversations. So look into that, because there's some strategy, right? You and I can't have a crucial conversation if we don't have trust, right? You and I can't deal with something if there's no trust. So that's a problem, right? And so there's some prerequisites to certain conversations. And sometimes we have a feeling that, like, you know, maybe it's someone I don't trust, but we're going to have an argument and I'm going to somehow like change his mind. Like, it doesn't work that way. Right. And so consider what are the prerequisites need to exist in the conversation. The other part is, what's the objective? Is it to hear ourselves yell? Is it to make ourselves right? And be mindful at least what your objective is. And they don't have to be the same, right? The other individual might have the objective of trying to change your mind. Maybe your objective, Gary, is to understand them because you're looking for a different viewpoint, or you're curious on how someone would understand something so drastically different than you. Make that the mission. So, but understand that there needs to be some prerequisites, right, to the conversation. And then to disengage emotionally, most emotion ultimately roots back to our ego and the avoidance of looking bad and trying to look good, Well, let go of that. You don't need someone else's opinion to validate yourself. So be comfortable in your own thought process. Listen to understand. And if they see it different, then realize they just see it different, right? So much of our emotional conversations is the meaning that we create around the conversation. Oh, I can't believe they said that. They said blah, blah, blah. Well, why are you so mad? Because you made that mean something about you and or them. Oh, well, if they see that, then this, that. Really? Right? How often have we seen this? I'm going to get on the soapbox. How often do we see this bullshit? Right? Oh, if you're voting for this or you have this mentality, you can unfriend me right now. Why? Because if you see something a certain way, then that must mean blah. Really? Does it? Could it mean that I actually misunderstand the circumstance and I bought into, I don't know, social circles that I'm part of, and I've identified myself with a particular tribe, and so I'm being really ignorant instead of looking into the details. I'm just going along to get along because I think that political group aligns with what I think? Possibly. Could it also mean that I understand the circumstance better than you do? And that me being in your life might be really important, right? It's all meaning that we're adding to everything constantly, right? I was just having this conversation with my 7-year-old daughter the other day. If you don't mind me sharing, we're going to use the 7-year-old daughter, Gary, to work through this question. My apologies. I think it's a good example though, it's my 9-year-old. Oh, I'm so frustrated. Why? Well, with her younger sister, she constantly does this, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and it makes you mad? Yeah, it does makes you mad. Okay, well, can you change her? No, I can't change her. Can you make her do something different? No, I can't. Okay, what can you change? Well, I could not play with her and just ignore, stay away from her. That's true. You could do that. You could avoid the conversations. But do you still have some kind of feelings that might make you a little bit angry, even though you're not hanging out with her? Yeah, I'd still have those feelings. Okay. What else do you have control over? Do you have control over your mind, how you see things? Yeah. But I see it because of the way she does something. Oh, okay. Well, what did she do? She did ABC. Oh, okay. Well, her doing that means that about you? Yeah. Who decided that? Oh, I did. Okay. That's your perception, right? Your sister doing a certain thing doesn't mean that she, in this example, doesn't like you. That just means that she did X. That's it. You decide the interpretation of people's conversation. You determine the perception of people's actions. And sometimes we just don't know, right? So we can gather more data or whatever, but maybe just not even follow it to a conclusion of what it means about anything. Because guess what? You probably don't know. So just get logical about the understanding of the conversation, and you can really approach it from a non-emotional perspective. And really, and at least for me, when I go into a kind of a conversation like this and I remove the emotion, I start getting curious, and it starts becoming a curious conversation. And now my focus is not about changing perspectives and creating meaning as just understanding. And understanding why someone would feel something or feel a particular way or think a certain way. And that's just impactful. And then they feel even listened to. And then you can walk away, guess what? With no conclusion. That's really interesting. Cool. Man, if we could just do that, how much different would society be if we just did that? Be quite amazing. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up. Hopefully that was beneficial, guys. For future Ask Me Anythings or AMAs, you can submit your questions on the Facebook group. That's facebook.com/group/Order of Man. Or, of course, you could join us in the Iron Council, which we filled questions from as well. To learn more about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. For some of you guys, we have 12 weeks remaining out of the year. You may have read Sovereignty, Ryan's book. You may have also read the book 12-Week Year. But regardless, there's strategies around 12 weeks, and 90-day goal setting. You got 90 days to finish off 22 strong, to get on that court, to assist you in that process of rising up and getting on the path and making some progress. Look into the Battle Ready program. It is a free program in which you can sign up, which will guide you through the process of establishing a vision, objectives, and tactics, and help you wrap up this year strong. To learn more, go to orderofman.com/battle-ready. And as of course, to support this podcast, to support the Order of Man movement, do everything from subscribing to the podcast, sharing the message, subscribing to the YouTube channel, joining us on Facebook, representing the order through our swag at the store, that's store.orderofman.com, or following us on Instagram and Facebook. We love to get your guys' feedback. I love to get your guys' feedback and hear what conversations are resonating with you guys on the podcast. So reach out, connect with us there. And until Friday, for Friday Field Notes, take action and become the man you were meant to be.